So, what was going on for you in your life when you first came across Jolie's work in the year of opening?
I'm gonna try and be succinct with that. A lot. But I had started a long distance open relationship, and that had been going on for 6, 7 months, something like that. And it was my first experience with it. I like kind of heard the concept before. But when I met my now partner, I think the first time we talked on the phone, she just kind of mentioned it and gave me a book to read. But I was in a place where I did not want a relationship. That's the last thing I was looking for. I was recently widowed and just kind of in a place where I just didn't want to be responsible for somebody. I didn't want to be in a relationship. And so I was just kind of dating and having fun. And I ended up falling in love with somebody. And we kind of talked through a way that we could kind of both be our own people and still see what we had together. Um, but, by the time I discovered Jolie, um, we'd been doing it and we were okay. Um, but I would call it rudderless,
Mm.
just kind of being buffeted by the storm and just kind of like taking each wave as it came. And a lot of how we operated was, well, we don't really know what we're doing. We don't know what our boundaries are. You know, I was in a place where I didn't know what I wanted or didn't want until I experienced it. Um, and that was working ish, not really, but kind of. And I discovered, I think it was the pillars of opening and kind of read through it. And I was like, oh man, there's a guidebook here. And I'd read a handful of books, but it just, you know, there's reading a book and then there's experiencing life. And so I would say that I was practicing non-monogamy, but I didn't have a coach to use a sports reference. Just very fresh and just kind of, doing whatever came up. So
What
yeah.
was happening for you in that experience? Did you feel, you said rudderless. Did
hmm
you feel enthusiastic about it for yourself? Like were your concerns more about your own experience or about like continuing in a particular path with this new person who you were
hmm
caring about?
Um, no, I was really excited. I was excited for me. I was excited for all the opportunities that I felt that I had, and I was excited that I felt that I could fall in love with this person and not feel trapped or caged.
Mm.
And because of that, one thing, we had a motto early on, that was just fuck it, hurt me. And so I was just excited to be doing all of it. It felt fresh and new and exciting, and there was a lot of pain and a lot of uh, difficult moments. But overall, no, I was thrilled and I was enthusiastic, and I was able to relationships I'd had previous to that, I felt like I was always kind of keeping an arm out. And I would bring somebody in, but only so much. And if they kind of reciprocated to that level, like, okay, let's push this back a little bit. And with what we had kind of talked through initially, I didn't feel that. And I was so excited to just like fully profess and explore all the feelings I was having for this person without being worried about the door shutting behind me and just, the oh no, I've made a terrible mistake. Like, so
Mm.
no, I was definitely excited.
I think that leads us beautifully to the next question because and so my question here is I'm really curious what it was that you imagined you were needed to learn. What were you hoping to learn or change? Cuz having a lot of enthusiasm is awesome and I'm loving that idea of fuck it, hurt me to a point. Like there's something to be said for that willingness to be in the destructive exploration. Like, okay, let's do it. But I'm guessing that you did want to learn or change or develop something. Do you know what it was?
Um, like in short, everything. Um,
Mm,
I I'll use like a work analogy or school or anytime if you are if you are the best at what you're doing in a room of people, that's a very difficult way to learn. And you can learn, but that's a tough, slow road. If you drop yourself into a room of people who are all much better than you, you're going to learn very quick, and you're going to see, a ceiling you never imagined. Um, and so I think I think really what I was craving and what books couldn't provide is just real everyday people and the things that they were working through. Um, as well as not that I leaned on, you know, necessarily other people's experiences, but it was nice to see people who had been in similar situations and had come out of them and had moved uh, beyond that. So I don't know that there was anything specific that I came in wanting to learn, um, but I knew um, that there was a lot to learn. Um,
that's a good spot to be, to
That's a
know
great
that
spot.
you
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know yet.
Yep.
And you just
right,
need to be in some context where you could be exposed to it. That's a strong learning
It's
position.
a strong learning position, and the idea of coming in like, I don't know what I wanna learn because I don't know what there is to learn, but I'm gonna pay attention. Like, coming
exactly.
in like that, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it showed.
Yep.
I wanna offer back that it showed in your approach to you would sometimes have a some either resistance or some like I don't know that that makes sense and I witnessed you allowing yourself to be in the resistance of it or in the I don't know whether that's going to work and to just stay there and not force yourself to pretend that you already knew the
Mhm.
answer or you
Mhm,
already had it figured out and just
mhm,
be in that uncomfortable place of not yet knowing and from my position as, a guide in that moment, watching you do that also fed the group. They watched you
mm,
sit in that discomfort, and I saw other people respond like, "Wow, okay, maybe we can just be with this and not lose hope that there will be a beyond, that there is something next." So that
mhm.
was something really strong that you brought to the group, and I'm grateful for it.
Um, thanks for saying that. I think a memory that spurred is that particular time. I was also really open to being challenged. I felt so confident about my relationship. Um, but I also knew that there were a lot of things that, from the outside may seem, um, you know, that let me start again. I wanted people I knew and trusted and loved to, with care, challenge every decision I was making because I felt so confident that I wanted them to find something. Like if you find something, I'm happy to hear it because I don't want to hide from anything. I want everything up front. And taking that into the class, like I was ready to be challenged. And if there was something that I didn't agree with or that sat wrong with me, I wanted to sit with that and find out why, and just take that take that to heart.
Yeah. Well, I know it mattered to me, and I watched it change how some people who were experiencing a resistance that would have been more passive, like, "I'm disengaging, I'm gonna drop out, I'm gonna drop back," stay more present.
Yeah, you helped demonstrate that in the group it was okay to challenge
Hmm.
Yeah,
because, as Jolie was saying, there are people who are like, "No, I shouldn't challenge. I shouldn't like, rock the boat." And you're like, "I have a question. I have a concern. I have a
or,
thought.
"I don't think that's gonna work at
I
all."
don't think it's going to work." And so everybody else got to observe that
Yeah.
and then relax into asking their own questions.
That also got let
Which,
m gave
yeah,
me
go
a
ahead.
chance to be opposed, which I really appreciate. Like, when I'm in that, like, educator role, there's a power dynamic there, and some people just will not say, like, "That's not working for me, that explanation doesn't work," or, "I don't think that that holds water," in my situation at least. And one of my goals is to show that these are consciousness methods. Like, you're gonna apply them to your own relationship. I'm not the expert of your relationship. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
expert on relating,
Hmm.
and so you provided that pushback that let me make the space more courageous, and
Hmm.
I can't do that without people to be
Hmm.
in that spot of like, "Yeah, I'm gonna push a little, I'm gonna be a
Hmm.
little resistant," and I'm just really glad we get to also name that here because I think that's something that people don't always expect in groups. They expect that the guide, the teacher to be like, want to be the expert and not be challenged, and that's
Mm.
very much not how I hold myself, but how do you show it? Like, how do you
Yeah,
demonstrate it other than
right.
in class? So,
So I think that brings us very naturally to the next question. What was it like to be part of a group talking about personal relationship stuff, intimate stuff?
Um, I mean, I think that strikes to the previous question of what I was looking for, and that was kind of secondhand, real world issues. And some of them, I don't want to say, unsolvable, but really difficult things that um, people were working through. I, I didn't have uh, people were understanding of me being non-monogamous, especially after being widowed. I feel like I got kind of a pass when I would tell people that, like, "Oh, of course you're doing that now. Like that's that makes sense, or you should do whatever you want." But I didn't have anybody. If there was anybody I went to confide in, I felt like I had to get them up to speed first, and even then, they still weren't fully, at a level to be able to talk through difficult issues. And so having people willing to share things that were going on in their lives in this area, just to sit and listen, was huge. I mean, that's um, probably the biggest draw for me, um, and I think the as any group does, it took some time to build. But over the months and kind of the gentle shares and stuff, it relatively quickly became a really safe space for just about anything, and it was really comforting to have that community and just to kind of, again, not being the smartest person in the room, being able to have here's a situation that I'm dealing with. Can anybody speak to this? And having multiple people be like, yeah, I've dealt with that a ton. I'm dealing with that right now. Here's what worked for me, and here's what didn't. And maybe it'll work for you, and it doesn't. But um, and then I don't know if this is necessarily the group, but kind of having that. I know that once a week at this time, I have this space that I can inhabit, and so even when I'm not there, I know that it exists for me. And especially on the days where I didn't feel like saying anything or I didn't even want to be there, it was nice to just kind of sit and listen. It was also a really good way to, as somebody who, had felt rudderless or being buffeted or the fuck it, hurt me ethos of like, let's just do things until they feel bad and then kind of work back and we can figure out boundaries that way. Just listening to other people talk and hearing something be like, oh, respect, that will never work for me. Like, I've just discovered a boundary and I didn't have to do something that hurt me to find it.
I just love that so very much. I feel like when I'm talking to people about being in a group and they're feeling scared about sharing their most vulnerable stuff,
Mhm.
like, yeah, but one of the things you'll potentially get is that moment where you don't hurt yourself or your partner because you witness someone else going through something. And we so rarely get to do that in our mundane lives.
Mhm.
And I watched it happen in your cohort in particular. Like there were several times where somebody said, "Oh, well, I'm not going to do that. So thanks. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that's happening right now."
Mhm.
And it's something that I think it's hard to believe will happen, but, also you were very vulnerable about, like, just saying what was. I remember witnessing you, and your partner just call yourselves in on, like, "Hey, I'm out of integrity in this boundary holding right
Mhm.
here. I'm out of, like," and using that safe space to be a place to just say, "Yeah, we're gonna mess up. Can we
Mhm.
now do that and be witnessed?" And it was, I mean, you were creating something with them that I can't do that. Like, I can't do that top down. You have to do that together. I can just provide the space. So I'm so grateful you were willing to.
Mm. And I want to
Mm.
clarify one thing in there is that it's not, there were things where somebody would share just a facet that they loved about their relationship. Like, I'm not talking about bad things or being out of integrity. Like, somebody would just like, "Oh, this is my favorite part of like how I'm doing my relationship," and that would strike me. I'd be like, "I don't want that." Like, that's right. So it's not
I love that
even
even more. I love that even more. Yeah,
well,
like
like that's
something that you could celebrate for them, but
yeah,
still be like, "Oh,
yeah,
and
with
no,
absolutely no
we're not gonna be
judgment.
doing that."
Like, I'm so glad to hear this because now I'm able to be like, "Oh, yeah, now I know that I don't want that for myself." And then
Yeah.
also things that I'd be like, that sounds really difficult, but maybe there's a part of me that wants to do that. Maybe that's something I could work on in the future." But just that whole range that I would have never been
Yeah.
to exposed to otherwise.
So I would love to hear, and you could take this whatever direction you like, but tell us something that you learned or something that you practiced that impacted your relationships. Maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting, or just maybe one of the tools that you're like, "Oh, that one, that stuck."
Yeah, so where to start with this one? Um Um, I think, like, most practically, the tools that I learned were kind of the biggest game changers. Just learning how to alert myself to being elevated and learning how that learning to just kind of keep an eye out for that in my body and realizing that in myself before I start acting on that.
Hmm.
That is invaluable. More specifically, the Imago dialogue was such a like an instant game changer in my relationship. I'm chatty and can get really I can get defensive, but I also feel like I have the answers. And so with those combined, if my partner's bringing something to me, I'm immediately kind of all over them. Well, actually, I meant this or blah 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 blah, and just learning to sit and listen. The first time we did that together, it it was like a revelation, um, and I think we both felt heard and understood in ways that just hadn't happened before. Um,
Yeah. And that's a funny one because it can feel so clunky, and then you do it, you're like, "Oh."
right, and I know it doesn't work for. I know it can work for not every tool is for every person, but like for me and just um how much I just want to explain myself,
Yeah.
Okay.
and how that was just I was kind of stepping on my own feet and kind of smothering my partner with that.
Yeah.
So that was
I
huge.
identify with that. Yeah. That the Imago dialogue felt like magic to me.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a whole other way this can go. Just a way I never imagined once I stepped away from, like you said, that explaining. That'll come later. I
And
just
not
gotta
even
know.
and not even using it all the time, but
Mhm.
knowing that it's there if you need it, and just being able, "Hey, do we need to have, this specific style of conversation around this or not?" And being able to separate those out,
Yeah.
helps, like, daily, and, we have them, maybe once a month, uh, because we're able to, "Okay, no, I do feel heard, we don't," but just having that in the toolbox, huge.
Yeah. I like that you're differentiating between sometimes we hit a speed bump. We can acknowledge it and just knowing, yep, we got it. But to know that you have the tool also allows you to name like, oh, this is a problem that deserves applying the tool. Let's go use
Right.
it, right? You can
Right,
label
and
it.
yeah, and if the topic has come up, kind of more than once,
Mhm.
or we start getting into anything circular,
Yeah,
we both know that we can move to that, and that, we're not just gonna spiral into that forever, we can do something about it.
I love that.
Um, I have if I can share one more big
Please.
one,
Yeah.
Please do.
um, projection and projection recall, was I felt like, um I'm just going to use a bad analogy, so I won't. I was projecting so much, and I just had no idea that that's what I was doing. And it took a lot of work, and I finally got there, and I noticed it in the moment. And then from that moment on, I started noticing it more and more. And then, once I was able to realize that, and kind of it feels like I confessed it to my
Yeah.
partner, like I could see the weight lift from her through the realization, and I was just able to, so much of this is just a big thing I learned is a lot of this is just on me, and that sucks to learn because it's so much easier if it's not your fault. No, that's your stuff, man. Like go and do it. I was like, oh no, I have a lot of work to do here, and it's doubly insidious because what I was projecting was my ability to be in a non-monogamous relationship, and
Mm.
um once I was able to see that and work through that, I just like so much of our conflict was kind of born out of that. And I still have a long way to go with it, but that was that I don't know if you call that a tool, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
totally.
that
I
yeah,
definitely do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
it
um,
is. It's like a double-edged sword, or maybe, I don't know, a double-edged Band-Aid, because it does. It's like, "Oh, this sucks. It's all on me." On the other hand, there's something I can do to change it. So there's this other side
I
that's
don't have to
like,
right.
wait for my
"Oh,
partner.
wait a minute. I actually have some influence over this and I can make things better."
Right, and projection is just it's so rotten because it's just taking all these things that are about me and that I need to work on, and then putting them on my partner, making them think that or feel that they need to work on that. And so I'm
Mm,
not doing the work, I'm putting it on them, and it's just this confusing, ugly, blamey mess. And having that kind of drained away, yeah, huge.
I I really appreciate you naming that, and I wanna verify that using it as a tool. So that word projection, we use it casually in, common language these days, just saying like, "Oh, he's projecting, they're projecting." But to think of it as a tool is to
Mhm,
really empower yourself. Like,
mhm,
"Oh, the projection is gonna happen. That's natural. It's a normal psychological process."
yeah.
A crappy one that we don't really love, but
mhm.
there it is. Like, it's for a reason. It's so you can see your unconscious material. But the tool is I get to recollect it. I get to go do the recall on that, bring it back,
Mhm.
and reclaim what is mine. And that's the piece that that doesn't get talked about,
Yep.
and so we wind up in that cycle in our
Mhm.
relationships that goes on and on and on, often for, yeah, like a whole 50-year marriage,
Yeah.
and then we die.
And then we
So,
die, and
way to
the
go doing the work.
yeah, because it is, it's the projection is the first step in a cycle.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah,
like this loop, and if you don't close the loop by recollecting the projection,
Mhm.
that the tool of like, okay, let me take the next step. But
Mhm.
if
yeah.
you don't even know there's a step to take,
You just keep it's just
you
like
just
it's just bouncing back and forth
yeah,
on
it's just
mirrors.
bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
It helped me to visualize it like I'm just asking her to hold on to, like, stones. And
Yeah.
so each
Mm,
thing is just like I'm putting another, 4-pound rock in her backpack. She's got to walk with
Yeah.
that. And I'm 4 pounds lighter, even though it's my rock.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's realizing that's happened and then recollecting, like taking that back.
yeah,
Yeah.
love that.
It's it's a gift, and the thing is, it's what lets you get to know your actual partner. Like, because up till like, when we're
Yes.
projecting, we're not knowing our partner, we're knowing our projections on
Yes.
them.
Yes.
So, the joy of finding out who that person really is every
Hmm.
time I take that rock back. And we have to keep doing it, because 'cause we'll just, we that is the ongoing work of
Yeah.
relating. So, way
That's
to go.
that's a
It's
really good point in that I'd forgotten too, is because when you're doing that, you end up like correcting your ways based on your own projection. So you're adjusting to what you actually need, and your partner's just kind of left there.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's very solipsist sort of thing. I mean,
Yes.
Jolie and I projected against each other for like 3 years before we really started to undo
Didn't
it.
even know who he was.
Nope,
No
and
idea.
it's like
Just a mirror.
and then we started working on it, and we didn't have like, it wasn't as clear as Jolie has made it, but we worked our way through it, and it was like, "Oh, there you are."
Fascinating.
That's like, "Oh, you're not me. How amazing."
It's nice to finally have a relationship with someone else
Right,
instead
yeah.
of just a hall of mirrors. I thank you so much for taking this time,
um,
for just bearing your soul here and through the conversation. I really appreciate how frank and honest you are about your
Yeah, really
experience.
appreciate it.
mm,
As
yeah.
a
Oh, go ahead.
as we finish, I just want to give you a chance to say, if there's anything that you wanted to say that you didn't have a chance to, please do.
I could rap about this for hours. There's so much. I guess I'd say what I didn't expect when I started, this group with you. I knew that there was a good chance to strengthen my relationship and learn how to deal with non-monogamy more. And this is going to sound so naive, but like I didn't realize that working on those things would focus so much on myself and vice versa. And I was not, I think I was caught off guard by the amount of interpersonal work that I had to do and the amount of personal growth that I experienced over the year. Um, I think when I speak about this class, this group to people, that's something I say a lot is just you're doing so much for yourself and you're working so much on yourself, that I think I fell into a space where with non-monogamy, it felt like navel gazing. It just felt like, oh, we're just talking about our relationship. We're just talking about our relationship so much. It feels like kind of gross. Uh, and we're working on the relationship and talking about the relationship is working on yourself. And that's whether you're in any type of relationship. And that was,
Yeah.
I felt wholly like I don't want to say morally good. That's too coded, but I felt really good about the work that I was doing, um, every day through that group.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd add.
I'm I'm with you. The reason that Year of Opening exists is really because I mean, Ken and I counted up the hours we were spending on our relationship when our analyst asked us to, and we were like, "Ooh, we're breaking a full-time job talking about our relationship. Maybe we could systematize this a little bit. Maybe we could be more methodical and
Streamline a
not."
little. Yeah.
Yeah, so that we could actually relate to each other.
Mhm.
And that I needed that myself because I'm like you. I'll just chat about it endlessly,
Mhm.
but not with any necessarily progress toward, the goal that I want. So,
Sure.
I'm glad that it landed that way for you and that it
Yeah.
had that impact, and
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to have had a chance to work with you. Thanks for being
Same.
part of the whole process. I deeply
Um,
appreciate you.
it's the
Totally.
best random, I think, like midnight Instagram find ever.
I love that. I love that. I can be better than, like, the random dolls somebody used to order off of, Home Shopping
Home
Network.
shopping network.
Now
uh,
now we can order random polyamory education on
I
on
mean,
Instagram. I love it. I
it's
love
just kind
that.
of silly how that happened, but yeah, it's awesome.